Of all the free agent moves that happened this offseason, Danielle Hunter may be the most impactful as he moves from the Minnesota Vikings to the Houston Texans. That and more coming up on this episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into this Friday episode of Locked On NFL. This is your daily podcast covering the National Football League, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. I'm David Harrison. He's Tony Wiggins. We are your hosts for this Locked On NFL Friday episode. Both of us credentialed members of the media. He's covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm covering the Washington Commanders, and we are doing it here on Locked On NFL, which is with you on every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers and everydayers. We greatly appreciate your continued support for this show and your favorite Locked On podcast on the network. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some NFC South drama that is going down. We're talking about why Christian Wilkins might be the most missed player from his former team, the Miami Dolphins, as he moves on to what he hopes is going to be greener pastures. But we're going to start by talking about the players that moved teams this offseason in free agency or in trade or however they move teams. And we're starting it off with the most impactful free agent move this offseason, Wig. You're saying that is Danielle Hunter, who's making the move from Minnesota to Houston.
Absolutely. It's not the player always just by himself. David, first of all, what's up, my boy? And it's not necessarily always the player, but it is what you're adding him to. And what you're adding a guy like Danielle Hunter to is a team that already knew how to get out after the passer, right? So he's a little bit of an older player, late 20s, maybe early 30s. But the thing is you won't be asking him to do a whole bunch of stuff that you're asking a 25-year-old to do. But what he will bring is he brings, I believe, one of the 7 or 8 best pass rushers, pure pass rushers in the National Football League. He's always in physical tip-top shape, especially when he's really, really healthy. And he gives you a guy that Will Anderson. There's not very many people I would say, well, this is a great mentor for Will Anderson, because Will Anderson came into the league better than a lot of people. Danielle Hunter is a great mentor for Will Anderson. And will give, you won't have a point of reference now. Okay, we'll take him out and we'll take our chances with the other guy. Oh, no, you will not do that with him on that team. With the way that they play, high octane, you think about D'Amico Ryans and the 49ers. I just think it was a home run. It was a home run, man. The Jaguar fans can get mad at me for saying that because they're in the division. But the thing is they were, for the last 2 years, they've been talking about getting Danielle Hunter. And they got him on a 2-year deal, almost basically fully guaranteed at about $24.5 per. Yep. He's going to be worth every single dollar for that franchise.
Yeah, man. What I love about what the Houston Texans did this offseason is they did essentially the opposite of what we've seen a lot of NFL franchises do. And that is this team had a lot of success with a first-year head coach, a rookie on the defensive side of the ball that was explosive, a rookie on the offensive side of the ball in the most important position that was incredibly explosive. And what a lot of NFL teams do and that we've seen in the past is they kind of just stay on pat. They're like, all right, let's just continue to develop this group and let's just make this group better. The Jacksonville Jaguars might be one of those teams. But what the Houston Texans did is they not only went out there and got Danielle Hunter, who, like you said, is going to help that defense just with his play, but also he's going to help that Will Anderson. Like Will Anderson, if there's something that Danielle Hunter can really help Will Anderson with is help usher him in as the undoubted leader of that defense. And he kind of already is there, but there's more to being a leader than just being the top dog. There's how you mold people around you, how you inspire people around you. Danielle Hunter is going to be able to help with that. But then you look on the offensive side of the ball, they also traded for Stephon Diggs, Buffalo Bills wide receiver, who's going to help CJ Stroud. He's also going to help Nico Collins, who had a new contract from the Houston Texans, and that's going to help him. There you go. That's going to help him thrive even more in this offense. You already had an 11th ranked defense, like you mentioned. That's only going to get better. And now you got running back Joe Mixon in the backfield, who's a veteran addition to replace Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce, who hopefully is going to have a bounce back performance in this year after not having a great follow up to his rookie season. So yeah, I think the Houston Texans just in general knocked this offseason out of the park, and I really like the fact that they're looking at their quarterback and saying, man, we had a lot of success in one year. Let's go create even more success. Let's not just sit back and wait for the success to find us. And yeah, man, the AFC South is they're in trouble. They're in trouble. They got to stay healthy for one, and then they got to compete with what suddenly looks like a very, very dangerous Houston Texans team. Another team that's got to compete with that Houston Texans team, Wig, the Baltimore Ravens. And to me, the next biggest free agent addition this offseason, Derrick Henry going to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, look, I get it. And Titans fans will tell you, Derrick Henry is not the King Henry of old. He's lost a step. He's not as agile even as he was. And I know he wasn't always known for his agility anyway, but even that, he's a little bit stiffer. And maybe he's not the bowling ball he used to be. But look, at the end of the day, the Tennessee Titans last season faced the second most amount of stacked boxes in the National Football League. So what that tells you is, I don't care if he's missed a step. I don't care if he's not as powerful as he used to be. The bottom line is the National Football League respects the heck out of Derrick Henry, and they stack boxes when he is on the field. You know what happens to defenses that stack boxes, who got speed all over the field on the offense against them, and a quarterback that can run around or even through your stacked box? That is a problem. And Wig, when you're going to face play action against the Baltimore Ravens offense this year, I don't know what you're going to do, because at the end of the day, you're going to make a wrong decision somewhere. You're going to keep your box loose because you got to guard your edges, you got to guard deep, and Derrick Henry's just going to eat you alive, or you're going to stack that box and Lamar Jackson is going to run around you or throw the ball to one of his receivers or one of his other playmakers, tight end and all that stuff. It's going to be really, really hard for any defense to defend the Baltimore Ravens offense this season. And the singular addition of Derrick Henry really takes this unit that's already a Super Bowl contender to a whole other level. Derrick
Henry, the first coast Duval, not Duval, but Jacksonville area native, my wife's second cousin. I will tell you this, man. I think the older you get, it's obvious that you slow down. But I think running behind the worst offensive line in the league and a rookie quarterback against the stacked box made it appear that he slowed down a whole bunch more than he actually did. Now, you put him in a situation where Baltimore, traditionally, even if they have line problems, they work them out some type of way with the dudes that they have at some point during the season. I don't know if you can take I think this is a quintuplet. I did go to Duval County schools. I think 5 means quintuplet, right? I don't think there's a more dangerous, because of the way that they fit together, group than this. I want you to listen to me. Baltimore and their tradition and their attitude and the way that they approach. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, and Zay Flowers. I just don't. When you sit and imagine those guys together and the complementary pieces and the parts on offense, you think, okay, you start stacking a box to stop Derrick Henry, you're going to get play action, whoopsie-doop, I'm running this way. And then when you assign a guy in that same scenario to spy on Lamar Jackson, here comes Mark Andrews leaking out in the short, shallow areas and can catch the ball and run after the catch. And then all of a sudden they get you going that way and they get Lamar Jackson to pull a little bit of okie doke and a little fake to all of those things. And now everybody's standing there like they're in quicksand. The wrong thing you want to do is be flat-footed with a dude like Zay Flowers that can catch it and run in between people, or he can run past people. Don't misjudge that situation. I don't think he slowed down at all. I think he slowed down naturally, but I don't think he slowed down as much as people think. I just think he was running behind a bad situation, and they are absolutely dangerous. You could not be more right about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, you faced the Titans last year. No disrespect to anybody over there, but you stop Derrick Henry, you stop the Titans. You don't got to worry right now about Will Levis. Maybe someday you'll have to worry about Will Levis. Right now, he's not that quarterback in the National Football League. And like you said, that offensive line. Look, the Baltimore Ravens had the 4th highest scoring offense in the National Football League last year without Derrick Henry. Now you bring Derrick Henry in there. I mean, look, Todd Monken, bro, like, if you don't have a top 4, top 3 unit this year, you might get fired, because you got too many weapons to not just be putting up points on a regular basis. Wig, I think some honorable mentions here. Justin Fields, Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that could be a massive improvement or a massive impact, because his mobility and what he can do. Look, Kenny Pickett, not necessarily a statue, but he's not Justin Fields' amount of mobility either. I think that mobility, if the Pittsburgh Steelers do what the Bears never let him do and really tap into the athleticism, could really make a difference. Not saying he'll put him in Super Bowl, but I think it could be interesting. And yes, I know that's not a free agent signing. And yes, I know that he's got to win the job still, but that tells you what I think is going to happen in Pittsburgh. And then Kirk Cousins with the Atlanta Falcons. You got to see the proof in the pudding, but obviously the Atlanta Falcons are expected to do some good things this year. Well, while the Houston Texans are enjoying their additions, and while the Baltimore Ravens are certainly looking forward to playing with their new king in the offense, there are some teams, Wig, that are going to be missing some players that they were not able to retain, including the Miami Dolphins, who I don't know how you let Christian Wilkins out the door, but they did, and it's going to hurt in a big way. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors, eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to you as customers.
Thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen, your first view today and every day. Everydayers, thanks for coming through like you do. Make sure you come back on Monday. Kevin Ostreicher, Locked On Ravens, will be back to kick off a whole new week of Locked On NFL. But in the meantime, if you just can't get enough sports coverage, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. It is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories, can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, all streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We just identified two of the biggest free agent additions this offseason as teams wrap up their mini camps, get ready for training camp. Danielle Hunter in Houston, and of course, Derrick Henry in Baltimore. So while they're enjoying their new faces, there are some teams that are trying to figure out how to replace some old faces. Wig, you say that Christian Wilkins is missing out of Miami, is going to be the biggest absence from an NFL team this offseason.
Yeah, and part of this is aesthetics. So let me explain that. I think Christian Wilkins is a really, really good player, right? And I also can understand why a team that has to pay so many different people, including a quarterback that's coming up to get paid, they're paying big money to two wide receivers and a corner. I get why they say, and an edge rusher, I get why they're saying, you know what, we have to make a priority. We have to prioritize something. But here's the problem. He's a very, very good player, regardless if you want to make it about economics or prioritize whatever. He's a very, very good player. But here's the thing when I say aesthetics for Miami. The one thing about the Dolphins that we can say is a positive is they're super explosive. The other thing that we can say is a negative is that when they play a good team or a team that can exploit the fact that they aren't super, super physical, that really makes the difference. Now, when people talk about physicality, they think I'm only talking about offense. No, because Miami can score 24 points in their sleep. You know, they can go out and score 24 points in their sleep. What they don't do very well in the trenches on both sides of the ball is respond to physicality. So you take one of the most physical players that you have and you let him walk. I think what it is it comes down to they're going to be identified as this fast team, this team with all of these weapons. And now, even on defense, they've lost physicality. Every team needs bodyguards. Every team needs muscle. Every team needs somebody that can stand up and impose their will on both sides of the ball and say, not on my watch. Now, yeah, they got Jalen Ramsey. They got Jordan Poyer. They got all of these guys. They got a bunch of edge rushers that they hope to come back. I think they have a lot of young talent. They don't have a trench monster like Christian Wilkins that can just totally dominate a game. We've seen guys like Chris Jones and Aaron Donald be able to do that. Jeffrey Simmons, guys that have been able to say, not on my watch, I'm taking this thing over right now in a critical time. I just think they lost a lot of physicality, and you just can't replace that for a team that already probably need to keep him and add some more to it.
Yep. And they lost it in the worst possible spot, right at the middle. Like at the end of the day, man, like some quarterbacks don't care about blindside pressure. Some quarterbacks don't care about frontside pressure. Every quarterback cares about pressure in their face, right up the middle. No quarterback is comfortable with pressure right up the middle. And if you can collapse the middle, right? What made Aaron Donald so great, even if he wasn't necessarily getting his numbers on a per game basis, game to game, stat per stat, what made him so dangerous is at the end of the day, whoever was playing against the Los Angeles Rams, they had two of their interior defense or offensive linemen were focused on one dude. And when you do that, you start to shrink the offensive line, because when you pull a guard in to help that center, or you pull the other guard to help in that center, everybody else has got to shrink down too. That gives your edge rushers more space. That gives your safeties, your linebackers come on delayed blitzes, whatever it is. That's what helps make your defense so effective. And what compounds the loss of Christian Wilkins, the Miami Dolphins didn't even look to replace him in the NFL draft. They didn't spend a first-round draft pick on a defensive tackle. They went and got Chop Robinson. And I love Chop Robinson, but Chop Robinson's projected to play behind Jalen Phillips. You also got Bradley Chubb. You got Shaquille Barrett out there. Where's your first-round pick going to play? How much burn is your first-round pick really going to get? And when he's trying to run around that edge and you've got a tight end and a tackle who are out there to block him and not worried about the interior pass rush, it's not going to look all that great. Yeah, they got a lot of speed on their defense, a lot of speed on their team, but this game at the end of the day is going to be won by the most physical of teams, especially in bad weather games. And if they got to go to Baltimore for a playoff game, I don't know how you plan on stopping Derrick Henry, but T.R. Tart, no offense, bro, you're probably not the answer for that job. And that's going to be an interesting one. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Miami Dolphins. So definitely a painful loss there. I got to stick to the AFC, but I'm looking at the Los Angeles Chargers. And it was a pocketbook situation, right? I get it. Keenan Allen gone. Mike Williams gone. Justin Herbert, personally, Justin Herbert was already crowned too early, right? People are talking about Justin Herbert being like the contender to Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he can unseat Josh Allen as, the third or fourth best quarterback in the AFC and all this other stuff. Bro hadn't even played a playoff game yet. And people were talking like that. Dude hadn't even won a playoff game and people were talking like that. Now, the Los Angeles Chargers, you bring in a new coach who's supposed to be, inventive and exciting and reinvigorating. But what you do to your young quarterback is you take away Keenan Allen, you take away Mike Williams, and I understand it's a money situation, and you leave him with Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson, Ladd McConkey, DJ Chark, and Brendan Rice. And I like all of those dudes. Honestly, I do. I like all of those dudes. Not a single one of these guys can I point to and say, you are a surefire, no doubt, number 2 receiver in the National Football League right now. I can't even give you a number 2 receiver for Justin Herbert, and someone's got to be the one. Right? Someone's got to be the number 1 guy. Then someone's got to be the number 2 guy. And then I don't know who's going to be the number 3 guy. But this is a situation that Justin Herbert is basically getting the opposite treatment that CJ Stroud is getting. And people were more excited about Justin Herbert than CJ Stroud, relatively speaking. So I don't know what the Chargers are doing. I don't honestly know why Coach Harbaugh took this job the way that he did. We talked about this previous to the coaching cycle. A lot of people were talking about the Chargers being the best available job in the National Football League. I looked at it and said, I don't think that's a very good job at all. You got an impatient owner, no money, and you're going to have to get rid of talent to make the money work. And that's exactly what's happened. And you look at Coach Harbaugh, this could be a situation where 2025 offseason, people are talking about, did the Chargers make a mistake by hiring Harbaugh? I'm going to ask, did Harbaugh make a mistake by joining the Chargers?
Yeah, respectfully now, I disagree with you a little bit because I don't think – I think he was a great hire, and I think it was the right position because I do think he needed a quarterback. He needed it, and I do believe you're correct where he was crowned too quickly. Here's the thing. They needed to be more physical, and that's exactly the route he went. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I'm saying he went with Joe Alt, right? He kept his defense at least for another year. He got some running backs and Gus Edwards, and he went to Baltimore and got some help from some people he's very familiar with. And then he went and got Greg Roman. So with Greg Roman, apparently he is used to operating without great receivers, right? Yeah, I don't think you can fix everything in 1 year. I think the easiest thing to fix in the future is to find a number 1 wide receiver. I think what he is doing is he is tightening the screws up on the rest of that stuff and controlling all of the leaks in the defense and the offense, in the way that they melted down at the end of games, and everyone said that Brandon Staley is going to Staley, right? Those guys are still, that's what they grew up with that. So that even if it was Staley's fault, well, guess what? It's been his fault for a few years now. And that's what those people know how to do. And you got to change that. So I think instant success might not come. And what you're eventually going to see from Justin Herbert might not come. This may be a Troy Aikman situation, and I'm going to explain what that is. We're going to be physical. We're going to run the football. We're going to play. We're going to keep everything the way it's supposed to be. And when folks look at Aikman's stats and they go, he wasn't that good, I'm like, you're out of your mind, because guess what? When they asked him to do something, he was able to do it physically. When they said we need to throw, we need to throw. When it's 3rd and 12, they got 13 yards. And they condensed everything and put it in a box, and they made that talented quarterback be good consistently when he had to be good in certain moments. And that's pressure within itself, as opposed to just letting the dude come up and shoot it 50 times and he gets 20 shots and ends up with 50 points and you go, he had a good game. No, he didn't. We want you to shoot it 20 times, but we're going to make sure you make 13 of them. So we're going to be more efficient. So that's the attitude that I believe that they took. I think he's doing the hard work early, and he's going to do the easy work later. And lo and behold, guess what? They might develop. It might be a Patriot situation where Ladd McConkey gives you this, and they are able to develop Johnson from last year. And I love Trey Palmer, and he's able to do a little bit of that. So it may be one of those situations for a while, the way New England was at the early part of Brady's career. Remember, Tom Brady's best statistical season, they didn't win anything. They won when they were a physical team, controlled the football, and he was able to just be great in moments when he had to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear everything you're saying. This isn't a Chargers episode, so I'm not going to too deep into it. But my question would be, is Dean Spanos going to be patient enough to let this process play itself out? Because he has not shown the most patience in the world as an NFL owner. So that's my big question there. Another honorable mention we'll throw out there real quick. Carolina Panthers losing Jeremy Chin and Frankie Louvu. I mean, look, the Carolina Panthers didn't have a whole lot going on. They also lost Brian Burns. I don't, so I don't know how much you can miss people when you weren't really taking them anywhere anyway. But I think certainly some significant losses out there in Carolina. Speaking of significant losses, Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints, could they be on odds to a point where Alvin Kamara could be leaving New Orleans? Is recent news reason to be concerned down in New Orleans? We will discuss that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL, wrapping up the week here at Locked On NFL. And Wig, we've talked a lot, not just us, national media, Ross Jackson at Locked On Saints, talked a lot about the New Orleans Saints and salary cap management, all that stuff. They've got a new salary situation to deal with, and that is running back Alvin Kamara, who has 2 years left on his current contract and has not necessarily been the Alvin Kamara that everybody loved and fell in love with coming out of Tennessee when he was the young hotness in the National Football League. But because that deal is essentially only a 1-year deal, he's only set to make $10.2 million in base salary with only $1 million guaranteed. His 2025 salary is completely non-guaranteed, which means the Saints can do whatever the heck they want after this season. He is looking for a new deal. And the way that he made it known he's looking for a new deal, Wig, is after the walkthrough on Thursday, final day of mandatory minicamp in New Orleans, he left. He left practice, and his agent has made it known that he wants a new contract. They have been discussing, the Saints and Kamara's camp have been discussing a new contract restructure for a few months, quote unquote now, but there's been no progress according to NFL Network's Mike Garafolo. So Alvin Kamara, I mean, whether it's his fault or not the top back in the National Football League anymore like he was at one point, suspended for the first 3 games of 2023 after his incident at the Pro Bowl in Las Vegas 2022. The New Orleans Saints are kind of at this crossroads. Like, do we keep trying to bring in veterans and pay people money? Do we still think our window's open? The Atlanta Falcons are making moves. The Buccaneers are 3-time defending division champs. Wig, this situation with Kamara, big deal or not a big deal?
I think it's a big deal. I'm a sentimental type. There are some players that you never want to see in another uniform, and Alvin Kamara is one of them. The late Will Smith was one. Demario Douglas is another, if I'm a Saints fan. You just don't want to see them anywhere else. But those days are behind us, and I can understand the Saints making this decision. But before they do it, they need to understand something. He has a lot, because of a lot of things that you mentioned with the suspension, having little injuries that weren't the type that were, would linger on too much, and they weren't the type that would derail a career. He hasn't had a whole bunch of wear and tear on his body, and I think there's a lot of juice left in him, because when you look at him play, that's the word that comes to mind, juice, right? And remember, Christian McCaffrey, he's still ticking. Alvin Kamara is a very, very similar player in terms of skill set. With Christian McCaffrey is the best balance of a running back I've seen in a long time. And think about Leonard Fournette and guys like Dalvin Cook that just don't have their legs anymore, right? Yep. And Alvin Kamara still has that type of juice. I think it would be a tragic mistake for a team, especially a team that says the salary cap isn't real and that they figured out. When you start giving Derrick Carr all that money, and you don't pay Alvin Kamara, and you don't do the things that you need to do to make sure that you keep some of your core parts together, it's very rare that a guy wants to play his entire career in one city. And I think Ross Jackson, I read something that he wrote today. Ross says, Alvin said it in his face that he wants to be a Saint for life. I think that's what this is about. Mark my word. Let him go if you want to, and he's going to have the last 3 years of his career out there with Patrick Mahomes. And, it's gonna be a huge regret on a whole bunch of people's parts. Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him join the Carolina Panthers and just torment the New Orleans Saints twice a year for the rest of his career.
Right.
Look, yeah, Alvin Kamara, he doesn't carry the weight on the national scene the way that he used to, but you're right. You're absolutely right. When he's on the field, he's still a very good running back, maybe one of the best in the National Football League comparatively. And then you talk about the Christian McCaffrey comp. That's a beautiful comp because who's the New Orleans Saints offensive coordinator right now? Clint Kubiak, who just came from San Francisco. And honestly, Wig, his agent, might not be a dumb person, might say, hey, look, my client fits really, really well in your new offensive coordinator system. You want him in that system. We need a little bit of more security moving down the road. So we'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. I don't think that this anyway, like there's a trade coming if they don't get a contract done or there. I think there's more just a statement, get the word out in the public and get some reactions out there. So I do think that, Alvin Kamara is going to be a New Orleans Saint for at least 2024. We'll see what happens beyond that. Wig, in the other NFC South news, the NFL found the Atlanta Falcons liable, guilty, whatever you want to call it for the NFL. They have violated the league's anti-tampering policy this offseason with 3 free agents, one of them being quarterback Kirk Cousins, another being wide receiver Darnell Mooney coming over from Chicago Bears, another being tight end Charlie Werner. Because of their violations, they are being docked their 2025 5th-round pick. The team is being fined $250,000, and general manager Terry Fontenot is getting fined $50,000 in person. The question, Wig, now is that enough of a punishment? Because they got themselves a potential, I don't want to say franchise quarterback, but franchise quarterback for a couple years. They got themselves a new wide receiver. They got themselves a new tight end. I mean, you can't draft that with a 5th-round draft pick. So is that enough of a punishment, or do you think that the NFL should just stop punishing people for tampering anyway?
No, it's not enough. Hell no, it's not enough. See, this is why when they call it an early tampering period, I'm like, well, that's an oxymoron, because if tampering suggests illegality. So that means you have a legal period where you can do something illegal. They just need to cut it out, man. And that's not enough punishment. I was watching The Wire, rewatching that show. Guy got caught trying to sell dope and shoot an undercover police officer. And when they found out the dope wasn't real, they realized they didn't have him for that, and he had nothing to do with the shooting, and they offered him 3 years. You know what he says? The guy named Savino, he goes, I'll do the 3. And I'm sure at some point, that's what they said with the Falcons. They said, oh, we got the 250. Ain't no problem. We'll give you the 5th. That's it. That's what it is, man. There are no consequences. People are going to see this and they're going to go tampering crazy now, because now ain't no consequences in tampering. And then there's precedents already set. Well, you can't fine me more than you fine them. And they had tampering with an S on it. They tampered people. I mean, there's a whole bunch. It wasn't just one. They did it to everybody. So now they've set a dangerous precedent now, man. And I just think the league is looking real silly today.
Yeah. I mean, would you trade a 5th-round draft pick for a quarterback that could take you to the next level, a wide receiver that could go with him, and a tight end?
They could have took a 4th. I'd have gave him a 4th. I'm like, all right, go ahead. You can take the 4th-round pick. I don't care.
I'll leave it with this. I'll give you an example here. When I was in high school, I got caught by the truancy officer skipping class. I got pulled in the principal's office. It wasn't my first time. I was a multi-time offender. My dad got called in the principal's office. And when we went down to the principal's office, they told my father they were suspending me out of school for 2 weeks. And my father looked at them and said, let me get this straight. My son is skipping classes, so you're going to suspend him and not allow him to come to school for the next 2 weeks. He cussed him out, told him what they were, and we left. And I honestly laughed because it was hilarious to me. That is basically what the NFL is doing here to the Atlanta Falcons. So
instead of making you go to extra classes, right? You should have been going extra classes to make up for the one. And by the way, David, I ain't gonna ask what you were skipping for, because that ain't none of my business. This ain't that type of move right here, right? So you keep that to yourself. We don't need to bother the Locked On NFL because I got an idea what you're doing, but we ain't gonna talk about that.
You know exactly what I was doing. But what we're doing is we're wrapping up this episode, wrapping up the week at Locked On NFL. Appreciate all of you for coming through. Come back Monday. Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens will be back to start off a whole new week here at Locked On NFL. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications for your second listen of the day. Check out Locked On Jags, Locked On Commanders, say right here, and head over to Locked On Sports today. As always, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen, your first view today and every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. For Tony Wiggins and David Harrison, we will see you right back here next Friday for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.